expectations are very different from God's plan. And even though we are reminded of that quite often, it takes a while to sink in. Sometimes, even when we understood it before, we still end up questioning God's plans over and over again when it doesn't match our expectations. In our prayers, a lot of people come to God with a list of requests, and it becomes a matter of whether or not God will give us what we want, or if we don't get it, we say, well, if the answer is no, then God must have a better plan, or maybe God is teaching us to be patient, to wait in faith. And while this isn't necessarily wrong, the basic of this approach is that God should match our expectations or exceed it. And this kind of thinking leads to many disappointments and frustration with God. In the time of Jesus, his disciples wanted him to be the Messiah that brought gold and glory, power, leading from the top. But instead, Jesus' plan was the complete opposite. It involved pain and suffering, serving in humility, and leading from the bottom. Matthew 20 verse 25 to 28 says, "But Jesus called them to him and said, 'You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you, but whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave, just as the Son of Man came not to be served but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many.'" Believing in Jesus as the Messiah, then, is about having the humility to receive God's plans, to be okay with things not going the way we expect it to be. If you're anything like me, and I know many Christians who are the same, then too often we say we believe in God's plans, we trust that God has good plans, but at the same time we question God's plans and wonder why it does not match any of our expectations. Or sometimes we come to God with a diamond request that our expectation be met. What I'd like to point out today is that perhaps we need to change our approach in asking God about things around us. Maybe instead of telling him what we want, we should ask him instead what he wants from us. Maybe instead of having expectations for God, we could accept that God's upside-down plan is way better than we could ever imagine. And we are part of that, and therefore in gratitude, we fulfill God's expectations for us. And God has in fact already told us what his expectations are and what he wants from us. God's expectation is for us to believe in him, to receive his grace, and to share that love with others.